Near-Death Experience Report, posted by Aradai to the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation. At the time of my experience, I was a workaholic. On top of my regular 40 hours a week of work, I was developing a forensic project along with the government in order to find missing or dead people in my country. This took another 20 to 30 hours of my week. I also practiced martial arts and lifted weights when I wasn't occupied with my friends. I was so busy that I was completely unaware of my health issues. The final straw was a fight with a person from the government who was helping me to develop the forensic project. I spiraled emotionally and I started to go to therapy. I realised that I was living a life that was not sustainable. Nothing made sense to me anymore. So, on October 18th, 2021, I abandoned the project, left my job, stopped exercising, and ended a relationship. That night, I went to sleep at 12 AM. I remember arriving in an empty place. There was literally nothing. No space, no time, no sky, no floor. Suddenly, I became aware that there was someone standing on my left side, and we started walking through a gallery. There were an infinite number of squares with a path in the middle. Each square had scenes from my life that were playing simultaneously. Each square had depth and colours of red, orange, and yellow. The entity with me started explaining what was happening. I felt completely at peace with myself. I felt that no matter what, that everything was okay, and that nothing could hurt me. Then, we started entering those squares from the gallery one by one. I remember one of the scenes from one square was from a time when I was a child. We went inside this square, and suddenly I gained complete awareness of the situation. My grandma was beating me. I was on the floor, but also, I was somehow inside of everything, like I was in another dimension itself. I had this 360-degree perspective going on. Then I noticed that the being next to me had no shape, but it was made of light. I could see the golden threads of reality. I could feel everything. I felt the beating and the pain I endured. I felt the rage of my grandma. This made me quite sad, although everything was fine, and somehow nothing could affect me. I never thought that someone could feel that way towards me. At the same time, the being was explaining to me what was happening. After the scene ended, we went outside and repeated the same activity in each of the squares until we reached the end. I then began to see a square materialise in front of me, and I saw a couple and the back of a man. I was ready to enter the square alone. Suddenly though, I was in another place. I don't know how I arrived there or why it even happened, since I was ready to enter what, I guess, was my next life. Yet, I was standing in front of Vishnu. He was seated on grass in the lotus pose and wearing only a brown loincloth. Behind him there were clouds. The sky was pink and gold in colour. At that moment, I experienced a feeling that I cannot describe, because I have never experienced it here on Earth. I felt absolute peace. There was no pain, no suffering, and everything was fine. He explained to me that I was in a place that was above good and bad. Those things I saw are human, but do not exist. He showed me pain, which seemed like a separate dimension, which is dark and heavy. He also told me that he doesn't need sacrifices, nor any kind of ritual, and that we are actually free. We're free to do whatever we want, whatever that is, because ultimately, it doesn't matter. He was holding a wooden spoon on his right hand and a white flower on his left hand. He had no navel. He didn't use words to communicate, and somehow it was all knowledge that I was receiving. Vishnu's eyes were bigger than those from a human, and his body was thin, long, and deep blue. His skin seemed thick and dry. When I started making sense of everything, his face changed. At first, the face resembled that of my therapist. Then, it looked like my face, and then looked like other people. The face wasn't changing shape, but I could see how others resemble him. So, I asked him who he is. He told me, while giving me a peaceful smile, that he is all of us. He then asked me if I wanted to come back. I understood that somehow we come to Earth to experience everything there is to experience, such as pain and suffering, happiness and pleasure. And this is because those things don't exist there. These things we experience on Earth are not real. As he smiled at me, I opened my eyes and realized that I wasn't breathing. I stared at the ceiling while I could feel air slowly entering my lungs, while the feeling of peacefulness vanished. I grabbed my phone and see that it's 1 a.m. I remained silent about the experience because I didn't know what had happened or if I was hallucinating. Then, I started getting sick. The doctors found a cancerous tumour in my ovary. I went through surgery to remove it. During surgery, I was dead for a few seconds and went to a peaceful place with grass. I was playing with a child, but was awakened by the anesthesiologist shouting my name and repeatedly slapping my face. That's how I realised that I may have been dead in October 2021. I started researching and found in Hindu mythology the very places I remember seeing in my experience. My psychologist says that maybe it was something I already knew and that's why I imagined it. But I don't think so, because I grew up in an extremely Catholic family. Logic tells me that I should have seen Jesus in my hallucination, or something Christian instead of Vishnu. Anyways, the doctors found a benign mass growing in my uterus. I'm healthy. I went back to the project and I'd finished it. Now, I want to focus more on enjoying life, the good and the bad. Sometimes I think that not everybody should have those experiences that I went through, because they would take advantage of the knowledge and do ugly things if they knew what I knew. I now live my life more responsibly since my experience. I take accountability for my actions, and I avoid hurting others. I also defend myself more. This whole experience changed me, and when I discovered that other people have had them, I felt validated. I don't fear death anymore. So at the bottom of this report, there's some further elements to discuss with an interviewer, and I'm just going to read through them off the cuff, so I apologise if I end up slipping up. At the time of your experience, was there an associated life-threatening event? No. Hard to tell. I died while I was sleeping. Over to this day, I still don't know what happened. I found out that it was an NDE by the things I recall. How do you consider the content of your experience? Both pleasant and distressing. Did you feel separated from your body? No, I clearly left my body and existed outside it. How did your highest level of consciousness and alertness during the experience compare to your normal everyday consciousness and alertness? More consciousness and alertness than normal. Normally I can only feel myself and guess how others are feeling through empathy. During my experience, I could literally feel what others were feeling and thinking at all times. Everything was simultaneous. At what time during the experience were you at your highest level of consciousness and alertness? When I was with Vishnu, and during the memory in which my grandma was beating me. The being next to me was explaining that someone who does that and feels that is incapable of love. Were your thoughts sped up? faster than usual? Did time seem to speed up or slow down? Everything seemed to be happening at once, or time stopped or lost all meaning. I relived all my life and talked to Vishnu in exactly an hour. I went to sleep at 12 and opened my eyes at 1. Time had no meaning and didn't exist in the places I visited. In the gallery, all of my life was playing at the same time. Were your senses more vivid than usual? Incredibly more vivid. Please compare your vision during the experience to your everyday vision that you had immediately prior to the time of experience. I didn't need glasses during my experience. All limitations from my body were non-existent there. Please compare your hearing during the experience to your everyday hearing that you had immediately prior to the time of experience. I normally hear through my ears. During my experience, I don't remember hearing through them. It's hard to explain. It's like sounds went straight to my head without going through my ears. Did you seem to be aware of things going on elsewhere? No. Did you pass into or through a tunnel? Yes. I don't know if I could describe it as a tunnel. I could draw it and it'd be as a gallery in the middle of nothing. Everything was empty and dark, and on both sides there were squares which were playing moments of my life. In the middle, there was a space in which I walked. Did you see any beings in your experience? No. Did you encounter or become aware of any deceased or alive beings? No. Did you see or feel surrounded by a brilliant light? A light clearly of mystical or otherworldly origin was present. Did you see an unearthly light? Uncertain. The only light I saw was this being that walked next to me through the squares. Did you seem to enter some other unearthly world? A clearly mystical or unearthly realm? First, the gallery was not dimensional. There was no space or no time. Then I was in the place where Vishnu was. It seemed familiar, but the sky was pink with gold. What emotions did you feel during the experience? Mostly, I felt the indescribable emotion, which was all peace and love and well-being. Then there was this feeling of being safe. At times, I experienced emotional, but inside the squares, it was also physical pain, although it couldn't affect me. I don't know what I meant when I said at times I experienced emotional. Did you have a feeling of peace or pleasantness? Incredible peace or pleasantness? Did you have a feeling of joy? Incredible joy? Did you feel a sense of harmony or unity with the universe? I felt no longer in conflict with nature. Did you suddenly seem to understand everything? Everything about myself or others? Yes, everything made sense in that moment, but I don't remember much now. Did scenes from your past come back to you? I remembered many past events. Yes, I was aware of all my life. I literally relived all my life, but from the inside, feeling the feelings of others and seeing everything in 360 degrees. Did scenes from the future come to you? No. Did you come to a border or point of no return? I came to a definite conscious decision to return to life. Yes, at the moment when I was going to cross to my other life, I was ready to leave everything behind. But I saw Vishnu right before entering, and then he gave me the choice. I decided to return. God, spirituality, and religion. What was your religion prior to your experience? Christian, Catholic. I was raised by Catholics, but I became an atheist as I grew up. Have your religious practices changed since your experience? Yes. I now believe that there's something out there, or something in me, that connects me with everything there is, and I don't need to do anything special to be in contact with it. What is your religion now? Hindu. Nowadays, I don't practice any religious rituals, but the things that were shown to me during my NDE are aligned mostly with Hindu traditions. Did your experience include features consistent with your earthly beliefs? Content that was in this, I really don't understand what this sentence says at the beginning. Content that was entirely not consistent with the beliefs you had at the time of your experience. I can only guess what is going on there. I always thought of myself as a person of science, so I rejected Catholicism. My experience challenged everything I was taught by my family and by society, and even those things that I thought I knew. I was taught that good people go to heaven and bad people are punished in hell, but my experience was nothing like that. Did you have a change in your values and beliefs because of your experience? Yes, I now believe that just existing is a great purpose, and that our lives are not meaningless. I believe that good and bad are both the same thing, but there should be a balance. We shouldn't be as good that we harm ourselves, or as bad that we harm others. Did you seem to encounter a mystical being or presence, or hear an unidentifiable voice? I encountered a definite being, or a voice clearly of mystical or unearthly origin. I encountered the being of light, and then Vishnu. He's usually depicted with jewels and stuff of that sort, but in my encounter, he was only wearing a loincloth, and seemed like a simple guy. Did you see deceased or religious spirits? No. Did you encounter or become aware of any beings who previously lived on Earth who are described by name in religions? For example, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, etc. Yes, Vishnu. During your experience, did you gain information about pre-mortal existence? Yes, when I saw Vishnu, I realised that I'm more than my earthly identity, and the prejudices and the culture and all those concepts within it. During experience, did you gain information about universal connection or oneness? Uncertain. Yes, we are all part of God, that came here to experience everything life offers. Again, strange sentence. During your experience, did you gain information about the existence of God? Yes, I saw a God, and he explained to me that he doesn't need anything from us, and he can't intervene because we are free to do whatever we want, and we basically are somehow part of him. Concerning our earthly lives other than religion. During your experience, did you gain special knowledge or information about your purpose? Yes, at that moment I knew everything about my purpose and about the things I was experiencing. During your experience, did you gain information about the meaning of life? Yes. The general purpose of life is experiencing it, as there's nothing similar where God lives. And then some of us come here with our particular purposes that we can fulfill, although we are free of doing something different. During your experience, did you gain information about an afterlife? Yes, I realised that life is continuous, and the only thing that dies is our physical body. Did you gain information about how to live our lives? Yes, I remember something I was taught about attachments. Our souls attach to material things. We become infatuated with illusory pleasures because they don't exist in the place where we come from. Thus, even things that are harmful to us make us addicted because our souls become obsessed with experiencing the same thing again and again. And on Earth, we find other souls going through the same thing. So we hurt each other and lose ourselves in the experience, getting trapped in reincarnation, as a way to learn to let go and repair those things that we broke or that broke us. That's probably my favourite insight so far. Sort of ties into the idea that consciousness, God, infinity, source, whatever, is on a eternal journey of facing its shadow, integrating it, moving on. And that sort of ties into the cycle of samsara, having to come back over and over again to face yourself rather than running away. During your experience, did you gain information about life's difficulties, challenges, and hardships? Uncertain. Yes, life on Earth offers a unique experience, and as much as the hardships can appear challenging on Earth, it means nothing ultimately. During your experience, did you gain information about love? Yes, love prevails and transcends death. Maybe it's the only real thing that we experience on Earth because it emanates directly from the being, and there are beings incapable of love. What life changes occurred in your life after your experience? Large changes in my life. I still believe that God, as is taught by religions, does not exist. The difference is that now I think that God is something that we can only understand through ourselves. Maybe God has the same doubts and inquiries as we do. Maybe he's not all powerful, but he definitely isn't someone who punishes us or who allows bad things to happen. Only we are responsible for the state of the world and the way we act towards each other. We could be more respectful, more responsible, more compassionate, but some choose not to and decide to blame God or the devil, which ultimately could be the same being, since there's no evil, no good. Have your relationships changed specifically because of your experience? Uncertain. I guess they have, but that's because I've changed. Just wanted to add some of my own thoughts to this. I personally do think there is a goodness to the universe. There's a great way of articulating this. I've seen it about where people use capital G good rather than lowercase good, and the capital G good encompasses both the good and the bad. So it's like the higher truth of the universe is eternal goodness, and within it is contained evil and lack of love, because to sort of transcend it, again, like I was saying before, you need to go through a journey of facing the darkness, integrating it, and sort of drowning it out with light and achieving a higher state of good. So there's like the lowercase good, where it's just like, oh, it's good to help an old lady across the street, or it's bad to push the old lady into the street. But the higher case good is like, this is just me speculating, but the higher case good is to obviously be as good as possible, but if you slip up and embrace the bad and sort of give in to the devil, then the goodness that can come from that is that you sort of have to pay the karma of doing what you did, and that makes you have to face up to yourself and move on from that and become a better person, realize, oh shit, I really shouldn't have pushed that old lady into the street, that was really not a nice thing to do. And then in a way, from that evil act came a bit of goodness, but only because you chose to align with the good. Because, I mean, you could easily push the old lady in the street, everyone's coming up to you like, mate, why have you done that? You're a dickhead. And some guy goes to punch you, and then you start fucking wailing on all these heads, beating them up. This is just me talking off the cuff though. But yeah, I personally think there's a higher goodness to everything, and that, yeah, there's a reason for the appearance of dualities, but that the dualities collapsed in this non-dual sense. But I don't think it's the fact that it's like, oh, there's no good or bad. Like, there's a higher ultimate degree of goodness and love that is able to be experienced and understood. But that's just me. After the NDE, sorry, this is the next segment. After the NDE, was the experience difficult to express in words? Yes, it is difficult, because I experienced things that don't have names. Those things I felt can't be felt on Earth. I could draw some things, although like the gallery and the threads of reality, I don't have the words to describe what they are. How accurately do you remember the experience in comparison to other life events that occurred around the time of the experience? I remember the experience more accurately than other life events that occurred around the time of the experience. I remember the experience vividly, but not so much what happened the days after. It seems like it was the most relevant thing. Do you have any psychic, non-ordinary, or other special gifts after your experience that you did not have before it? Yes. Right after my experience, I heard my cat speak to me. She asked me to open the door because my father was feeding them, she and the other cats. I also got knowledge during a dream about the death of a relative of my psychologist, and at times I have funny experiences with my friends when they tell me that it's weird that I know what they wanted exactly, etc. I don't know how to develop those things further, but a friend of mine says that it's a useless superpower, and I find it funny. Another thing I could say about this is that if you look into a lot of even like psychedelic trip reports, mystical experiences, out-of-body experiences, astral projection, anything that just sort of like leans into the mystical, immaterial, spiritual quality of life or consciousness, whatever you want to say, people often come back from it with this sort of semi-hitchhiker effect. If you don't know what the hitchhiker effect is, actually related to Skinwalker Ranch, where people would go to. Well, if you don't know what Skinwalker Ranch is, it's this place in Utah. It's been studied by the government for years, and it also has ties with the Native American tribes around there, where it's like people theorize it's sort of like a fissure in reality, where other worlds leak out into our own. It's a very paranormal, supernatural place where there's an incredible amount of testimonial accounts of seeing literal creatures, these skinwalker type beings. They're a bit like humans, but they crawl around on all fours, creepy stuff like dire wolves, and honestly just strange stuff like portals and beings and that, but that's a whole other topic entirely. But there's this effect where people go to this ranch and say they might not experience anything paranormal. They'll go there and just say, oh, it's just a ranch, bro. And then they go back home and it's like the paranormal aspect of the experience hitchhikes with them, comes with them back home, and then they start experiencing the weird stuff at home. So it's sort of like it doesn't allow them to see it while they're there, even though they are in sort of like this highly energetic place. I don't know what is going on with Skinwalker at all. This is just me using words to describe a paranormal thing. This paranormal place basically stays with you, and it comes back home, and it can even affect relatives or people in the house. So people you're close to, you can sort of like pass it on like a virus. Is sort of weird. And this is like the inverse of that. It's like a positive hitchhiker effect, where you've sort of experienced the beauty of ultimate universal God consciousness, and you come back and then you're sort of bestowed with abilities that aren't necessarily normal or explainable by science. So psychic stuff, clairvoyance, and other spiritual mystical gifts to allow you to like manipulate reality, even in a very small way, like sort of just having a greater sense of where someone's life is going when they might not. And this could just be attributed to higher consciousness. So yeah, there's so many different aspects to how this can materialize if you go into these mystical states. I mean, there's genuinely anecdotal evidence of people witnessing telekinesis and other mind-blowing stuff like that. It makes you think that maybe there's a lot more to this than meets the eye, and that there's connections between all these mystical things, paranormal things. And I'm definitely going to talk about Skinwalker Ranch at some point, because it sort of ties in to a lot of the stuff I talk about on this channel, like entity contact, UFOs, strange aspects of reality. So yeah, look forward to that. Are there one or several parts of your experience that are especially meaningful or significant to you? Yes, it was extremely important to me knowing that I had a choice, and that my life is in my hands, and that even if I can help society, I'm not obliged to. I am free. Have you ever shared this experience with others? Yes, a few months passed before I could share my experience. I shared it first with my psychologist. She told me that maybe I already knew those things, and that's why I dreamt them. Then she seemed more interested when she noticed that I changed as a person. She was impressed at some point because she couldn't believe how much progress I had made, and I guessed that she believed me after that. Then I shared it with my Catholic grandma, and she told me that she also feels God when she goes to church. I shared with my mum, and she took it to her advantage, and now she says that she wants to be other things in her next life. I can say that experiencing it myself, it changed me, and I am grateful for it. Did you have any knowledge of near-death experience prior to your experience? No. What did you believe about the reality of your experience shortly, days to weeks after it happened? Experience was definitely real. I tried to gaslight myself because it's hard to process such thing, but I couldn't. I eventually accepted things for what they are. What do you believe about the reality of your experience now? Experience was definitely real. I take it as a gift to do the best I can with my life. It happened in a moment where nothing I was doing with my life made sense, and I am grateful that I am here to experience everything there is to experience. At any time in your life, has anything ever reproduced any part of the experience? Yes, when I died during my surgery, the things I felt were similar. It was not as intense, but I definitely felt peaceful and happy. That's the closest I've gotten to reproduce my experience. Is there anything else that you would like to add about your experience? When I was there, it seemed like a good idea to come back, but now I regret it a bit. Are there any other questions that we could ask to help you communicate your experience? I think that the questionnaire is well made. What a great note to leave it on. Just want to talk about the regret with leaving this higher state of consciousness. this can often be a common thread in the sort of mystical breakthroughs on psychedelics that we've covered on the channel, where people sort of have like a greater appreciation of life and finitude, but they also miss that feeling of being infinite and limitless and having transcended good and bad and realized sort of universal love, if you want to call it. But it helps not to regret if you do go through this yourself, because at the end of the day, you chose to come back. This is the very important facet of this NDE and the last NDE that we covered, where they essentially died and became sort of whatever, like God or some higher state of being, and decided to return back to the material realm, dimension, whatever you want to call it. Again, I don't really know what's going on with all this stuff. This is just me trying to piece the puzzle together, as we're all trying to do. And yeah, I can just fathom if I was in this sort of experience, that's sort of what you want to do, because you appreciate your life from like a meta perspective, and instead of letting it go and just putting it away into the Akashic records, you go back and experience the rest of what you really were meant to experience in the first place, because we're here to experience, we're here to exist, no matter what form we take. You've got to see it through to its natural conclusion. And that doesn't mean you'll necessarily naturally die of just like old age or die in your sleep or anything. It means that it can end in any possible way, and you have to embrace that and accept it, bite the bullet, and realize that on the other side is eternal love and peace. But that peace will be deeper if you have experienced the hardships of finite existence. But that's just me. I could be completely wrong. But regardless, very interesting, these near-death experiences. I'd like to experience them more. I'd like to cover them more. I'm going to do them once a week, because this is really complementing the psychedelic experiences that I talk about, because I know a lot of people sort of have that mindset where it's, oh, it's just all in your head, it's all drugs, it's all just chemicals and etc. Which in some sense, yes, it very much is chemicals, just allowing your brain to interlink together and experience the higher consciousness. That's sort of like the mechanism via which it occurs in the physical realm. But I think there's way more to it than that. That's just me though. I could be completely crazy. But these NDEs, the way they tie in so neatly with these mystical experiences, show that maybe it's not just the brain at all, because these people are literally dead, physically dead, which means there is no brain to generate anything, yet the consciousness can still experience something. And that is somewhat more fascinating than taking a drug and experiencing mysticality, actually dying and experiencing it. Not being able to tether the explanation to a physical brain makes it a lot more profound. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it, and leave me your thoughts in the comments.